Hey, good afternoon, friends and family. Glad to have all of y'all joining with us today on this week's edition of Midweek Maranatha. And man, I'll tell you what, we got some stuff here to share with you guys, and some commentary, perspective on all of these things as well. The title today and the direction, the main direction that we're going, not entirely, but the main direction that we're going is, as you've seen in the title, a nuclear precipice, and then this. And man, I'm so excited. I love our brother that I've got joining with us today, and just a friend of our community and our family here. So please welcome today Pastor Gary Mckibben. Hey, Gary.
Evening. It's good to be here. I'm just wondering, am I a little bit too dark, or
no? You're looking good.
Am I looking good?
You're looking good, man.
That's the show done.
If I can have a little more volume on this in here, thank you. But no, you're looking great. How is everything going for you out there?
Yeah, same old thing. Well, when I say same old thing, we are continually fighting the fight. We're continually spreading the gospel in an atmosphere that is somewhat becoming more and more hindered to the gospel. But other than that, yeah, God has shone his face upon us, so nothing to complain about.
That's right. That's right. You know what? It's always, honestly, my wife always says it's always win-win for those in Christ.
Exactly.
Hey, we've read the end of the book, and guys, we win. Woo-hoo, I mean, praise the Lord. Doesn't mean that it's not difficult and hard, and the trials and all of those things along the way. Not underestimating those things at all. But yet the Lord uses those things, and hey, I just like that the end of it all is that we win. So praise the Lord for that, And by the way, just do want to call out and welcome all of our community that is joining with us right now. And as that's continuing to grow, we got so many. I see on the app there, we've got Sabrina on there, and Renee, Christine Miller, and all, and we've got a number of those that are watching, of course, on YouTube. We've got Hannelore Asset Ministries, Sir Pierce the Veil, Crisco Duck, Pookie, Hannelore, Caterlin, and of course, not just our mods, but just so many people that are watching as well. And so just, hey, I like that, Pookster. Make Jesus great again. Yeah, that's right. But here's the thing. We don't need to make Jesus great again, per se, because Jesus just simply is great.
Amen.
He is great. And praise the Lord for that. Pastor Brad Braun, Keto Mama. Hello, Mama. Lisa Nelson, Lori. We got Lori on there. And guys, this is like really fine print, and it's at a distance for me. So I'm like, I'm like squinting, and that's with my glasses on. I just like, my eyesight is just. That's the thing with getting older, I'm looking for I'm ready to turn this in for the new model, Yeah, seriously, sir. All right. Well, hey, we're going to get right on to it because we got so much to share. I do want to encourage everyone, though, please like and subscribe and share us out there on social media and all that good stuff. And thank you, by the way, everyone, before I forget, for your support of this ministry, your prayer support, your encouragement support, emails, letters, man. You guys are honestly a tremendous blessing to me, and you guys really are. Financial support, all that kind of stuff. You guys are the bomb. So, all right. Well, we're going to get right on to it. Man, I'll tell you what. It is ready to, excuse the pun, but explode, And, well, I don't know if I'd want to be in your part of the world right now either. I'm going to be there in a few months, I guess. But
yeah. It's all just this week specifically. I think you could see everything sort of playing out in real time from Monday, whenever Vladimir Putin signed into law the new nuclear guidelines, as in what would entail a nuclear response. And then obviously President Biden sending or allowing ATACMS to be used from the Ukraine side into Russia, and then Storm Shadow missiles being used. And now we've seen, like we were talking off air, the intercontinental ballistic missiles being used,
Wow.
which are primarily reserved for nuclear arsenal, but being used in Ukrainian territory. And you could see it. It's just like there's been this poking of the bear, and now we're seeing some sort of response. And I think that, like we talked yesterday, I think that this is telling the timing of this. I think anybody who has got an eye to see and ear to hear can say that the timing of this is a little bit suspect. Before the inauguration. Yeah. And I just think that there's so much happening right now that I can see that certain people, I think, will probably be asleep to this, but I don't know how you can. I don't know. I said to you yesterday that I think this puts the Cuban Missile Crisis on the back burner. This actually looks like it's going in that direction. Now, whether it goes in the direction of something full scale or something more localized is anybody's guess. But I think specifically the development today with Vladimir Putin using intercontinental ballistic missiles, that's kind of a step up yet again. And, one of the things I saw as well is that Russia are mass producing nuclear shelters. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's, again, another sign. And sorry for talking so long, but just
no.
One of the things that gets me is the UK are heavily involved in this. With it,
Yes.
It was the UK and France back in May that were trying to, or I think it was the summertime anyway, that were trying to push Biden into doing this, and Biden said no on the sort of stipulation that this would lead to World War III. And yet, what you're seeing in terms of the UK's response militarily, whilst doing all this, is kind of dumbfounding. So today, or was yesterday, they announced massive cuts to the military. So whilst engaging and allowing their weapons to be engaged on a major European war, they've said we're going to defund this bit, we're going to put this bit into administration, and they started to chip away at their own military. And all I can say is I believe that there's things playing out here that are probably deeper and darker than what we're seeing on the news. I don't know what you think of that, but
I mean, absolutely. I mean, we can't trust what's out there, on in the news media by any means. I mean, we've known that, especially over the past few years. That's become increasingly evident. The news media has been hacked, if you would, by and infiltrated by FBI, CIA. Just here in America, I'm saying. I know you guys got your issues over there as well. And no, you can't trust what's being put out there and how the news media is being influenced and everything. And you've got to dig deeper, and you've got to really take a look at things, with some critical thinking behind it and all of that. Because listen, what is going on? I mean, this is serious stuff. And specifically at this time and at this moment, I mean, think about it. Why would Joe Biden want to do what he's doing right now when he's only got 2 months left in office? Like, why would he want to do that? I mean, at this point, you think to yourself, okay, just try and skim on through and get by and whatever. But why right now? And I mean, I think that's a great question. I'd like to hear what your analysis is on that, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of my opinion on that as well. Why don't you tackle that one first for us?
I personally think, and I did sort of give this as a caveat prediction of what I thought would happen. I saw that Donald Trump would be elected. That was my sort of analysis of things. And then my sort of take on it is that there would be a globalist response to this. Now, whether they are a lame duck or just awaiting the administration to end, they can still throw a grenade into the upcoming administration. So if Donald Trump has been elected, and one of the things that he did say is that he would cause this war to end, this Ukrainian-Russian war to end, and he would basically be putting peace on the table, and that's it, and they would do as they're told. That's going to be much harder if what we're seeing here is an escalation up until Christmas.
Right.
So it came out today that yesterday that one of Putin's former spokespersons had said that the UK is looking at a possible nuclear war before Christmas. Right. And all of that rhetoric is just ramping up. So that what happens is if it does get to something like a suitcase nuke being used or localized to, even though it's not really localized when you take in the effects of this, right, in any shape or form through a proxy or in a proxy area, Donald Trump will have his hands tied. He won't be able to then go, all right, I'm going to usher in this peace deal. He will be forced into a response. So I think that the timing is very, very suggestive. I think that this is, like, one of the things that I think I said to you yesterday is that Donald Trump, I believe, was the right candidate to be elected, but it doesn't mean that it's going to stop prophecy fulfilling.
Absolutely.
What it's going to be, you're going to see this globalist sort of steam train just keep going in this direction, and it's got 100 different things sort of planned, based on how to come against Trump, how to use his administration, how to cause different things to happen. Because regardless of what people think, the 2030 agenda is coming.
Oh yeah,
and certainly right here in Europe, we are seeing the workings of that in a major way. Before I go on to that, I'll hand it over to you so you can respond to that to see what you think.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And guys, and exactly, and I'm glad that you said this, because I keep on thinking the same thing as well, Pastor Gary, is that, listen, look, God's timeline is going to be God's timeline. We know that. All right. It's just a matter of how the world gets there, which is some of the things that we talk about and have, conjecture over in all this. But could this be what's going on, an intentional Biden or Biden's handlers, either way, I don't care, but a Biden or Biden's handlers setting up this situation in which to retain power through executive action, executive orders, having to deal with what they could easily say is, we have entered into a national emergency, et cetera, and somehow, I don't know, in order to retain power, or also, like you're saying, to set up a situation to make it so difficult for Donald Trump, where if Donald Trump pretty much then comes into power and goes against, as these things continue to escalate, and he goes against that, right? Whether it's in the leading up to the inauguration or right around that time there, and where it can be said he is creating or committing treasonous act. See, he is in it with Russia. He's a Russian plant. And as a result, we need to not certify this election or prevent this election based on, X, Y, and Z. I'll tell you what, I really have to wonder, because I just don't believe much of anything anymore. I believe the word of God. Yeah. After that, everything these days gets really, really sketchy.
Yeah, I could see. I can see the sort of laying up for things. I think that if it got to a stage in which there was an attempt to hold on through executive decision, to power, I think then what you would see is a major revolt, because the election was emphatic in its results. The people spoke. It showed you how out of touch the political class are from the issues of the day. But it kind of, for me, is sort of reminiscent of Daniel 11. So in Daniel 11, when we talk about the coming of the little horn, when we talk about the Antichrist coming through, there is all of this sort of juxtapositioning going on. There's all of this sort of reshifting going on. And Daniel predicts it in the terms of the first example of the first sort of realization or manifestation of that is with Antioch Epiphanes, with coming from the lineage of Alexander the Great. But there was other generals there. There was the Seleucid line and so on. And these generals are all fighting for power. And I think that what we're seeing right now is the building up of globalist blocs or alliances, very reminiscent of World War II, pre-World War II, and even pre-World War I, when alliances start to form between nations. Now, the difference in the model of this between World War I and World War II and now, I believe that all the alliances have got one goal, and that is a kind of global dominance. It is a global order. So if you take the BRICS system and even the military alliances that are gathering between these BRICS nations, and then you take that, and then you have America, and then you have the likes of the European model, the European Union, which I was speaking to you before on, that Emmanuel Macron has said that he wants to completely restructure. And we're starting to see over here alliances being built really strong, where Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron are like best buddies on a road trip at the minute. They're all sort of high-fiving each other and coming up with these back deals to reverse Brexit. All of that is happening. And I think that it could be one of two ways that it goes. Either it means that when the inauguration happens, is that there's pressure put on the administration of Donald Trump for him to toe the line, or there is something catastrophic that comes to that administration to cause it to basically be an administration that's limping for the term. I believe that will be the way. Either he's going to they'll try and force him to toe the line, but I'm talking in terms of the world model. So if he doesn't toe the line, then I believe there'll be an economic issue come. I believe there'll be pressure from the Fed. I believe this pressure in terms of a nuclear event is certainly laying it up as this black swan event everybody has been looking for. But it's really interesting, because you're starting to see all of these globalist kind of alliances gathering, and they're all seeking dominance. And I believe that what will happen is something that we saw happen previously with other governments. I said to you, Liz Truss, when she had her 42-day prime ministership, right, when she was prime minister for 42 days, she was forced out basically by the bankers, right? So those in power, by the Bank of England, because what they did is they did not like her anti-globalist agenda, and they started to sell off government bonds. That caused a market crash. As that caused a market crash, point the fingers here, Liz Truss had to go. Now you could see something similar in the terms of, well, this nuclear event has happened maybe on the soil in Ukraine, maybe an intercontinental ballistic missile has been fired and it had nuclear capability, and it's dropped somewhere in the Dursk region or somewhere like that. And then the sort of finger pointing goes to the new administration rather than the old. You kind of saw that in the first term of Donald Trump, because if you remember, one of the things that was happening, there was all pre him coming in, there was all of these issues with Russia where Russian diplomats had been expelled from America, and then there was all of this sort of up in the air issue, because based on his response, that meant how the fingers were pointed. So because he wanted to reverse those decisions and not have them expelled, the finger pointing goes to him. And I think you're right. I think that a lot of these things, the timing,
Right.
I think it's just leading up to the inauguration. And
Yeah.
I think it's extremely interesting and in some way worrisome.
Absolutely. And, I mean, you've got the U.S. Defense Secretary pushing the buttons. I believe the deep state is pushing the buttons. You've got the NATO Secretary General pushing the buttons of the bear there as well. And you are taking a long drink of coffee, or you just froze. There we go. Now you're back.
I know. So the thing is it's snowing here and it's quite bad weather, so I'm wondering if my internet's going to drop in and out. So apologies.
Oh, no, you're all great. So what I said, though, is you got the NATO Secretary General, you got the Defense Secretary of the U.S., and they are just pushing these buttons big time. And this is one of the things that I think, because we are in an interesting period of time right here. And I think that the strategy from NATO and the U.S., Great Britain, of course, may be something like this. I think that they do not believe for a moment that Putin is going to launch a full-on nuke. I don't believe they think that. We all know, look, MAD, right? Mutual assured destruction. Where is the win in that? Okay? So I don't think that they think for a moment that he's actually going to do that. Although I will say, I do wonder, side note, and I'll get back to what I was going to say, that I think that there is a possibility that he could do a suitcase nuke within Russian territory there on Ukrainian troops. Okay. Yeah. Then it could be say, hey, this was a suitcase nuke. It's in his own territory, but it would send a strong message. I do question if that is a possibility. But getting back to things, though, so if NATO and the defense secretary think that Russia or Vladimir Putin is not going to actually really launch nukes here, then what would be their strategy? They are trying to do what NATO has been doing literally since the, if you want to say, supposed end of the Cold War. I believe that on the Soviet side that they were ending things and retreating. But in the time since then, NATO has been encroaching upon territory. NATO has been growing since then, even though, and I don't know if the audience out there knows this or not, even though NATO said in our agreements there with going back, I'm trying to think of the name right now, Gorbachev, okay, with the agreements that we would not do that very thing. So the Russian Federation, and they're not good guys. I'm not a Russian Putin sympathizer. They're not good guys, all right? However, they do view this as a real threat, and I get that, okay? So now we fast forward again back to right now, and if the Defense Department's posture is we don't believe that Vladimir Putin is going to actually take it to this level right here, then we have a window of opportunity before Trump gets in to actually strike fear in the Russian Federation and continue to expand on what we are trying to accomplish with NATO. And I think that also may be part of their strategy, knowing that their time is short before Trump gets in. And remember, Trump has already threatened pretty much to, trying to think of the way I can say this online, to remove key people within the military infrastructure. All right? Because he is viewing some of those as, and their actions as treasonous actions. And that's already been out there in social, or not in social media, but in the news as well. And certainly what took place with Afghanistan. Anyhow, that was a lot to say there. But And I believe that Afghanistan plays into all of this, by the way, as well.
Yeah, yeah. I also think that possibly one of the things that we talk about the timing of this. I think that they could have been taken off guard by the emphatic win that Donald Trump had, and hence sped up certain things that they were already planning. Because we already know that the military industrial complex sees Ukraine as a way to launder, a way to invest, a way to have continued revenue streams, and war makes billionaires, But if you think about the process and what NATO has done, since actually leading up to this war, the constant sort of crossing the line, Putin sort of letting countries that were on the border of Russian territory join NATO, or at least threaten to join NATO. And then you had all of the seizure of Russian assets, but also and it shows you that there's a plan here. I think during it was earlier in the year, there was a story that came out that NATO officials and members of the UN had got together to talk about seizing Chinese assets in Europe. So this is specifically in regards to big tech companies, anything AI, to seize them. And very in line with what they were doing with Russia. But what they've done in one way is they've tried to isolate and tried to make a pariah out of these big nations. But again, it's kind of, I don't know if it's backfired, because I'm trying to think what their long-term agenda in this is, other than complete and utter destruction, and words that I can't say on this platform, like the reducing of numbers, if that's the only way I can say it, But when you're looking at this, there's so much planned, and I wonder if the Trump win has sped up what they had to do. Because if it was Harrison, if it was the same Democratic Party, the Ukrainian war would have no threat of ending. That conflict was going to be a forever war, and then you have an individual elected who said, "I'm going to end this. I'm going to bring peace to the table," and automatically you get the same thing signed into being that he wouldn't sign in months ago. But when Biden signed this in to say, yes, we will let them use long-range missiles. And all of this just sort of strikes me that, in my opinion, I don't know about yours, but certainly when we talk about the United Nations, certainly when we talk about heads of state, and obviously not all, but the vast majority, I believe there's a plan in action. And I believe that they're reading right out of the book of Revelation. They're reading out of Revelation 13. They think all of this is a good idea, and they're going down that route. When you look at what's going on, it doesn't make logical sense. I think I mentioned to you yesterday the attack on farming here. So right now you've got farmers out protesting because there's an inheritance tax being brought into farming. There's also subsidies that they're supposed to get from the government that have all been taken away. But it's crazy how much has come against them, because what you're talking about, they're saying they want to take an inheritance tax so that the property and the land can't pass on in generations, and that's how farmers sort of survive.
Right.
And they're going to make all of this money, this Labour government, they're going to make all of this money now this is where it all sort of ties together. They're going to make all of this money to fill the 22 billion black hole that the Conservative Party left. But yet at the same time, they send 12.8 billion to Ukraine. So they believe that they're going to get the money back from the farmers and in one way, shape or form, starve the whole of the UK, despite them saying that, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that they've got food reserves for these farmer protests. They've got food reserves there. But they believe that they're going to get all of this money and it's going to plug an economic black hole. But at the same time, it's going out the window to Ukraine. And it shows you that there has to be some kind of agenda. And the only agenda that I'm aware of is the likes of the 2030 agenda, in which everybody's going to. The UK signed up to reduce their carbon emissions by 85% by 2035, just recently. Now, how do they do that? Well, they attack farming, they attack industry, they attack everything that kind of keeps the civilization going. And at the same time, what are they doing? How is their funding a war in Eastern Europe? How's that helping the environment? It's lunacy.
Right. Exactly. And let's not forget, they're also attacking cow gas. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
And y'all know what we're talking about here. All right. Because, hey, the gas coming from cows, that is going to destroy the world, guys. Oh my gosh. You have got to be kidding me, guys. And the fact that people actually, wackadoos out there, and they're wackadoos that believe this stuff, it's I'll tell you what, you say a lie often enough, it's a strategy, right? You say a lie often enough, eventually people begin to believe it, just because of the how commonplace the lie becomes. Now, one of the things that we've talked about is how all of these things are setting up the world, right? Because we see it's a great setup for the reset, right? How these things are setting up the world to recognize that, hey, we need someone who is a leader, someone who's going to be large and in charge, someone that is the, Mr. Fix-It, whatever you want to call him. And, I see America has been in the way in many regards. The globalists know that. And so what they have been attempting to do is to infiltrate American politics, infiltrate the universities in America as well, to change policy ultimately that the United States assimilates into what will we know eventually be that beast empire. And yes, America will eventually assimilate into that. This is going to be a global thing, guys. We know this. So I believe part of what we're seeing is the more that the United States cannot be trusted on the world scene, right? I mean, look, all of the world leaders know that there is greater than usual political turmoil in the United States over the past almost decade, right around there. Great political turmoil, and that's making them all think twice. They have seen how we handled Afghanistan and the withdrawal from Afghanistan, which was a hot mess. We left all of our global friends out there that were also involved in Afghanistan literally hanging, which was bad form, and so many other things. And so they recognized, look, guys, we've been able to depend on America during World War II and post-World War II, but the landscape is changing. And so as the trust for America being able to be the backbone of things global is beginning to change, they are also recognizing, and they have spoken about it very openly, especially the EU, and especially Emmanuel Macron of France, have spoken very openly that, look, guys, the era of, if you want to call it American exceptionalism or whatever, things are changing, and they recognize that we have got to take matters into our own hands. We have got to come closer together. We've got to unite even more so our militaries, our financial systems, all of these things. And by the way, so then we've got to ask ourselves the question, is that happening? The answer to that is yes, that is happening, and it has been happening. And so that is, I believe, actually the end result. Of course, we know that eventually the Antichrist, at the timing that God has already foreordained, is going to officially rise to power, and boom, baby, there you go.
Yeah, I say it in that sense that what you're saying is that it's the building up of different blocks around the world, and it is all based on their kind of reaction to what has just happened with America. I think the rest of the globalist elite were happy to go along with a democratic leader because they knew that they would be a sycophant for everything that was brought in.
Right.
Yes, you want to do DEI, diversity, equity index. Yeah, we'll go for it. But if you look at this, I said to you, I think last night, that on a lot of different things, America is so far ahead of the rest of the world. But in terms of the socialist sort of alphabetic kind of debased way of thinking, they're actually behind. In other words, we're further down the rabbit hole. And I know that's hard for a lot of your American audience to probably comprehend, but Europe is certainly way down the rabbit hole.
It's true.
Whenever I think it was earlier this year, there was a sort of, it was brought in as law in Europe. It was called the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. Now, that was all about every company in Europe signing up to Diversity Equity Index as a marker and ESGs. Now, they've already been used by companies, but the crux of this law was that it means that any company around the world that does business with a European company and they have to adhere to Diversity Equity Index just by association, but not just them. If, for instance, let's say there's a shop, let's say there's a supermarket in Europe, in the UK or in Ireland or whatever, right? And we're part of the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. But let's say we import something from America, and let's say it's a dairy product. Well, not just the supplier, the wholesale supplier of the dairy product, but those who raise the cows on the fields also have to adhere to the DEI index, right, and the ESGs. So this is happening is Europe has put into this in place this bill that now expands across the world like tentacles, and it's enforcing this, leftist sort of identity politics way of thinking as a mandate in order to do business with us. Now, again, going back to Trump, I think what has kind of thrown a spanner in the works for the globalist elite, and probably what has provoked this sort of military grenade being thrown into the system, is that Trump has already said he doesn't care about doing business with other countries in that sense. It's more about making America great again, America first, and he's going to put high tariffs on other countries. Now, what that's done is that's made the leaders of other countries go, well, you know what, we'll not bother with America, we'll not bother with Trump. We'll turn to our other brothers in Europe, or we'll turn to our other brothers in the Middle East. You saw this with Mohammed bin Salman. Now, Mohammed bin Salman refused to sign the petrodollar agreement again, right, which has affected the state of the economy in the world. But Mohammed bin Salman, I believe, I've already done a teaching on this, I believe he is a candidate as a possibility for an Antichrist, the Antichrist. There's so much, he's got his fingers into so many pies. And one of the things that he's come out with recently is the two-state solution, that the Arab Alliance wants to bring the two-state solution upon Israel. And now what you're seeing, even though America has abstained from that in terms of the UN, 75% of the United Nations have all voted for a two-state solution, right, to be enforced upon Israel. Even if it just shows you there's an isolation happening, and I believe America's being isolated, I believe Israel's being isolated. I believe both are prophetic. Prophetic in the sense that America does not feature in biblical end-time prophecy. Now, that does not mean that America ceases to exist, but if there's a form of isolation, whether willful through Donald Trump or whether through it's pushed into being because it's kind of like being shunned in the playground, we'll not play with that kid and we'll all go into a gang over here, that can happen. And then with Israel, well, that's Zechariah chapter 12. Israel becomes a burdensome stone. Israel becomes a cup of drunkenness for the nations. Like we saw today that the ICC have put out arrest warrants for Gallant and Netanyahu,
Right.
but also said that they can't. This means that they can't go to 124 of the nations that are part of the UN, because as soon as they touch down there, they can be arrested.
Yeah.
So
can you imagine?
it's crazy.
It's
There's
crazy.
an isolation happening. And I think there's an isolation happening in terms of America, and there's an isolation happening in terms of Israel, and there are these other building blocks being built. And Emmanuel Macron was very, very clear. He wants to have a major standing army for Europe. He
Yes.
wants to restructure the whole of the European Union. This is the guy who refers to himself as Jupiter.
Yes. I was just literally thinking it. And he even said, Gary, when he was inaugurated to his first term, he even said that he was going to rule France with a Jupiterian rule, right?
Yeah.
Now, and of course, Jupiter is the highest of the gods in Rome, or the Roman gods. Of course, it's Zeus in Greek or Greece. It's Jupiter there, and so he's saying, "I am going to rule as the highest of the gods in the Roman world." Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely insane. By the way, guys, we are going to take questions here in a couple minutes. So just so you know. And Cali Gal saying, I interacted with some Saudi kids who were concerned about MBS some years ago. Yeah, by the way, let's not forget of the whole situation with Khashoggi. All right. I mean, body parts. All right. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. So that was quite the thing there as well. Now listen, we're talking about all of this stuff. We've got Biden approving anti-personnel mines for Ukraine. That was something that wasn't supposed to happen, by the way, because you can't trust Biden at all. I don't even think Biden can trust Biden, all right? So Biden approves anti-personnel mines for Ukraine, undoing his own policy. Why? Because these guys are liars. Like I said before, they suffer from liabilities. Okay. Let's look at this one right here. Hey, it is what it is. What it is. Okay, this one: Europe prepares for World War III. Now Germany reveals plans to mobilize national defense and 800,000 NATO troops after the Kremlin has put out their nuclear threat. Look at this right here. Major policy shift. Biden authorizes Ukraine use of U.S. missiles to hit targets deep inside Russia, which has already taken place. Russia launches ICBM missiles and attack in Ukraine. Of course, you have mentioned that one. Ukraine strikes Putin's estate with British missiles in bold move. Think that's going to get his attention, right? How about this one? North Korea, little rocket man, right? North Korea appears to be sending its powerful howitzers. That's a big deal, guys. Its powerful howitzers to the Ukraine war, where artillery has been king. And guys, this is turning into a war of attrition here, I believe. Side note. This one, World War III fears. Listen. As Sweden and Finland tell their citizens to prepare for nuclear war and to stockpile food and water. They're telling their people there, prepare. Yeah. NATO member issues warning of global scale war. By the way, that was a top Hungarian diplomat that had done that. I mean, folks, guys, this is not looking good at all. I'm just saying, it's pretty serious stuff, but we're also not afraid, because hey, we have Jesus, right? We got Jesus, so don't be afraid of these things, folks. So, all right, well, hey, are you ready, my friend, for some questions?
Yep, okay. I'm ready.
All right, let me see here. Do we have any questions yet? I don't think I've seen a question yet. You guys got some questions? Put it out there. Put the word question in all caps. And
to give them time, I just wanted to say, I think that this is all purposeful. I do. I think this is the Albert Pike situation coming on. The World War III scenario is being set before us, and I do think it's all purposeful. And it shows you. You mentioned Emmanuel Macron, and his sort of Jupiterian rule. Well, then I don't even know if the politicians are gathering this, or this is an end time deception that the enemy is trying to put out so many potential candidates as a future Antichrist. Because Jupiter obviously is Zeus. Zeus is where, well, the temple of Zeus, or the throne of Zeus, is Revelation 2:13. That's the seat of Pergamum. And his throne. That's the seat of Satan. Zeus can be traced back to the Babylonian entity Marduk, because he's associated with Jupiter, Jupiter, who's also seen as the devil. And it throws me that all of these politicians are sitting probably primed, ready to submit to the devil and to submit to Satan, in the sense that they would become an antichrist. And I think that there are so many potential candidates right out there right now that it's kind of alarming that so many people could step into that role.
Yeah, I agree.
I can see questions now.
I agree. Okay, so Cindy R., I have a serious question. Scroll up. I've been scrolling up and I'm not seeing it, Cindy. Maybe Pookie, maybe you can text me that if you find it. Because sorry, girl, but I'm just not.
Question here, I think this might be Cindy's. Do you think this immigration issue worldwide is a strategic plan by governments in preparation of a one world religion once Christians have been removed?
That's a great question. I'll let you take that first, and then I have something I'd like to say about that as well.
Yeah, I do, in the sense that I don't believe the one world religion in the sense is one specific mainstream religion. I believe it's a culmination of things. But I believe that what you're seeing and what you're going to see is, and what we have been seeing, are the wide open doors for mass illegal immigration, or if we're to coin the elites right now, irregular migration, because they don't want to call it what it is. They want to call it something different that doesn't sound so bad. So I believe that, yes, they open up the doors, and what you're seeing, certainly in Britain, I know, and we've had people come to our church, travel over from the mainland in England, and they've said that on the streets, and we've seen it, you can speak on a loudspeaker and proclaim the name of Allah, but the amount of Christians that are being arrested for preaching the gospel is unreal. And yet, on the counter to that, there's no repercussions for someone talking about Allah or Muhammad. Now, I believe that is purposeful. Now, it's purposeful because I believe that there's an old satanic strategy, and it was used by many governments, divide et imperia, divide and rule. So when Jesus says in Matthew 12 that a house divided against itself cannot stand, I believe that this is a response to that, in the sense that the devil was sitting there taking down notes and goes, that's great. If we divide the populace, they're easier to rule and curtail. Because what you'll see happen, and what you're kind of seeing happen, we've seen it here in the UK, is that you have one set of society, or one group of societies, treated in one way, and another group treated in another way. And instead of being cross or angry with who's doing the treating, they're cross and angry with each other. So eventually the blame finger will be pointed at religion. And what will happen is they'll say, look, this is too fundamentalist. This is too fundamentalist. Why can't we all just come together? Chrislam. So we're all serving the same God. Let's all do the same thing anyway, and let's just all be moderate. Now, in terms of the eschatology of things, I think that when we hit Ezekiel 38, the main line of fundamentalist Islamic sort of groupings will be wiped out, and what you'll be left with is moderate Islam. When you see the church raptured, or when we are raptured, when the church are raptured, and those who have maybe sat in church but not made a decision for Christ are left behind, they will be merging with those people. Not all of them, some of them will have a revival, but you will see a lot of this merge, and the one world religion will come through. It will be that amplification of Chrislam. And I believe that what we've seen with the Abrahamic foundations, or Abrahamic family house in the Arabian Peninsula, I believe that that is a direct fulfillment of Zechariah chapter 5. I'll let Kurt speak here because I can see my screen froze there, so I don't know if anybody heard me.
Yes, we can hear you, man. We can hear you. So, well, first of all, we see in the Word of God that God has set up borders, and so everything that God provides, Satan loves to pervert. So, if God has set up borders and national boundaries, we read about boundary stones in the Old Testament and everything. Then what does Satan want to do? He wants to remove the boundary stones. He wants to remove national borders, all of that, and it goes all the way back. You can go back to Nimrod and all of these things, and globalism, or the song in the 80s, right? We are the world, that whole goofy thing. And so here we find ourselves. So this is part of bringing together globalism. And we know that globalism is going to have two legs to it during the tribulation. There is the globalism as far as government, and there's the globalism as far as religion. Okay, so part of it is also feeding into that. It's going against God, going against His Word. It is going with the globalist mindset as well. And so that's the second point. The third point that I believe can be made with this as well is we're seeing populations in decline. Big time populations are in decline. Going back into the early 1950s, globally speaking, the average woman gave birth to, approximately 5 children. Now I think it's 2.3 or something like that. I forget what the number is exactly. I've got the data here, but anyhow, and this is a problem. This is a big problem in China, by the way. It's a problem in the United States. It's a real huge problem in Japan and elsewhere. So when we're seeing these populations in decline like this, well, how do we deal with this? Well, we have immigration, or in this point, illegal immigration. Okay. So let's move on to the next question, because I'm sure they are piling up. Okay, so Steve McAfee, question, are we actually in Psalm 83? You want to go for that?
Yeah, I believe, and I think it was October 9th after the October 7th horrific event happened. I did come out and I did say that I believe this is the embryonic stages of Psalm 83. And I do believe that's the case. And probably the real reason I believe it is how Israel is responding. So in Zechariah, I think it's Zechariah 12, right about verse 5, it says that God will make the feeble amongst Israel like David, and Israel like God. In other words, they will be making authoritative decisions. They will not be waiting for the world's okay. They'll be turning around and making a decision. We're going to attack Lebanon, or we're going to defend ourselves against the Houthis, or we're going to defend ourselves against Iran, the source behind it all. And then you see what the result. So in Psalm 83, it's the prayer of Asaph, and Asaph he's a seer as well, and he's in David's court, and his prayer is about these nations, these surrounding nations that are lining up, that have hatred in their hearts for Israel and have ill intent. What you see in Zechariah is the fulfillment of that, that God empowers Israel to take care of these surrounding nations. And we're seeing that. For the first time, I believe that we're seeing that. Now, some people will go back to the War of Independence and stuff, but the result of Psalm 83 is kind of a ring of peace, what we see when we get to Ezekiel 38, that they live in unwalled villages. And in other words, it's telling you about a place in which there's no direct, Israel will still be a burdensome stone, but there's no direct threat by those surrounding the territory. There still might be a direct threat by nations, but there's no direct threat by those that are on the borders. So it's unwalled and unmanned in that way. And then obviously what we're seeing, I believe this is Psalm 83, we're seeing the alliances of Ezekiel 38, and we probably have been since about 2019, line up. And these alliances are provoked and ready to go. So it only needs a hook in the mouth of Gog to pull Gog into the stage of attacking Israel. Now, could that be a Jeremiah 49 moment whenever, if Israel does what Trump has said, Trump has said, get this done before the inauguration. And if Israel turn around and do attack the nuclear arsenal of Iran, of the IRGC, well, then that would fulfill Jeremiah 49. That would be the destruction of the bow of Elam, and that could be a hook in the mouth of Gog. Now, that's me theorizing. But I think when you get down to this, we are living in these times, and it's exciting to be living in these times. Not exciting because there's bloodshed, but it's exciting because we know of the soon return of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And so I would say we're living in Psalm 83 right now. I think we're seeing it, and it's Ezekiel 38 could happen like that. I know Lee Brainerd thinks that we had talked about this before, that he believes that Psalm 83, it will go Psalm 83, and then it will go really, really quickly into Ezekiel 38. That could be the case. I'll tell you this. So one of the biggest intellects when we talk about theology for the last 1,000 years was the Vilna Gaon of the 17th century. So he was a rabbinic sage. Now, he was known, that was amongst his people, he was known for his intellect. And he gave some prophecies. Now, one of the prophecies was that when you see Russia take Crimea, it is time to put on your Shabbat clothing, right? That's 2024. Then he says, when you see Russia in Turkey, now that doesn't mean that Russia has to take Turkey. When Russia is in Turkey, I believe that's describing an alliance. He says it is time, the time of the Messiah is at hand. Now, I believe that it sort of equates to what we see in the Bible, and certainly what we're seeing throughout Ezekiel 38, Psalm 83.
I've got to say this, Pastor Gary. I'm looking forward next week to eating turkey. Okay, that's what I want. Give me some turkey, baby. And all of this, it really goes back to 1979 with the Iranian Revolution. And it had been leading up for some years, but it came to a head with the Iranian Revolution and the Ayatollah Khomeini in 1979, and that whole mess and everything. And it's just been downhill from there. By the way, side note, yes, Cy Blessed. I'm glad, and I'm glad it helped. So, but all right, Will, let's look here. More questions. Here we go. Let me see. Rick Whittaker, do you think we are being played? Yes, in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways. Yeah. So we'll leave that at that right now. Okay. Next, Pamela Minnick. If we're still here, do you think we'll have do you think we'll have an election in 4 years? If so, will it mean anything? Honestly asking for my friend. I think it's a great question, and you want to go with that? And then sure, I'd love to answer that question.
Yeah, well, I don't want to date set in any way, shape, or form, right? But I believe that we're in a rapture window. I believe that we're in a season that we're seeing so many things play out. And if I go back to what I was saying earlier about we're seeing a restructuring of the world right now. Now, does that mean that America will be restructured? Does that mean that it will, to answer your question, does it mean that it will have the same meaning? I honestly, I can't, tell you definitely. I can't say, with clarity and confidence, but I would say that America's power, certainly on the global sense, is going to be diminished in this next 4 years. Now, that doesn't mean that that's at the hand of Trump. I mean that that's at the hand of other entities building their building blocks, and so will it have the same power? I'm not 100% sure. Will it mean the same thing? I wouldn't have thought so. I think that the closer we get to 2030, which, look, regardless, let me be really quick with this. Ready? God is in control of the timing. That's why Jesus, is the Aleph and the Alpha and the Omega, the Aleph and the Tav. Because if you put those two letters together, it actually makes the word Eth in Hebrew, which is the word for time. God is the timing. He is the time frame. He is the one who sets the time. So regardless of what globalists are playing out, they're not in control of it, but you can see that there's an agenda for this, and 2030 is marked on this. So once we go to the next election, so if you go 4 years on, I think you're getting close to that point where I personally believe there may be a global restructuring happening. It doesn't mean that there will be independent local leaders. There may be a president, there may be a prime minister, but it's going to, in my opinion, look a lot different than it does now. That's the best I can give you for that.
Yeah, great. So let me look at this again. So again, if we're still here, do you think that we'll have an election in 4 years? And if so, will it mean anything? I mean, it is hard to answer that question, to be very honest with you. But I do believe this, that yes, if we are still here and having elections, will it mean anything? Well, this is what I said. It'll mean something if the Christians get out there and vote. Because now I know that there is the thinking out there that that there is cheating in elections, and that is true. All right, that is true to a certain degree. Then there's also the thought that means that why should we vote? Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. I'm not going to really get into all of that right now, but to say this, that, and I think I've said this before, that when you are looking at elections, most of our elections in the United States, especially over recent years, folks, are within the margin of error. When you're leading into the election, it's always within the margin of error where it's like, well, this one can win or that one can win. Okay? That is usually the case. So when that is the case, and when or if you have those that are manipulating the elections, right? It doesn't take much manipulation to turn the tide in the direction of the manipulators. All right? Mm-hmm. We know this. However, when we recognize that going back in the election 4 years ago, there were only 35% of Christians that voted, if you double that, or if you just double it to 70% or go even higher, there is such an overwhelming response by way of the Christians or the evangelicals that are out there, that it turns the tide where the cheaters cannot cheat at that level. Okay, mm-hmm. And so therefore at that point, then the cheaters can cheat all they want because they can't cheat at that great of a level without that becoming abundantly clear to the public what has happened. All right. Mm-hmm. So that is the short answer to that. There's a longer answer to that, but we only have so much time. So so we won't get to the longer answer. By the way, Pete Corns put on their question, do you think this mass migration in the world to set up the religions in the Antichrist system? I kind of think we already answered that one there, my friend, earlier. So we will leave that. And okay, next. And I hope I'm not missing any questions, guys. If I am, it's not intentional. Just so you know, we're doing the best. So Jay Azuno question. It says that there's no sorrow, tears, no pain, etc. Won't we feel any sadness or sorrow if we don't see our loved ones in heaven? Okay. Do you want to...
So what was the question? If we're in heaven, will we have sorrow for our lost loved ones? Is that
Right,
right?
exactly. It says that there's no sorrow, tears, pain. Won't we feel any sadness um, for our loved ones in heaven?
I think in general, it's a change of focus when we get to heaven. Now, the way I look at it is I take something like Psalm 16:11, and Psalm 16:11 says that in the presence of God is the fullness of joy.
Amen.
So it's not that you don't have a understanding of where your loved ones are, because we can take the example of Luke 16 and we can know that, the rich man could see right across to Lazarus, and Lazarus and the rich man are communicating. So there is some awareness of, well, other people are in different areas, whether they're on earth, because he talks about his family. Um, but in terms of your focus, I think that's the difference. I don't believe when it says no more sorrow and no more pain, when you're talking about no more tears, it's because you're in the presence of Jesus. And I don't know about you, but when I got born again, I remember I got born again on my wedding day in St. Lucia, and I came out of the cabin that we were staying in, and I was just overwhelmed by everything God had done. And I remember my wife, who was not saved at the time, was looking at me like I had two heads, because I was going, look, God made clouds. God made the sun. He made grass. And I was so in awe and so overwhelmed by it all. And she honestly, like, it was literally our wedding day I got saved. So she thought that she had made a mistake, that I was really off my rocker. But you imagine being in heaven in that, where, and it's not that you again are not in some way aware, but the overwhelming love, the overwhelming focus, the overwhelming feeling of being in the presence of Jesus, being in the presence of God. I think that your focus changes, and I think your focus will change, and also your understanding will change. I believe that when we get to heaven, certain things, will become will be revealed to us. We'll have our eyes open to certain things, because we'll not be seeing as we do in the worldly state. So it's not that I think that, look, whenever we talk about our loved ones here, we've got a finite amount of time here, and that's where we have to be busy about kingdom business. And I have
Amen.
this thing that I continually say in church: there's no such thing as pew sitters in a church, right? There's not. When the Church of Acts was born, they didn't say, right, now there's only going to be these guys serving and these guys witnessing and these guys sharing the gospel, but you guys, you're just there to sit and do nothing. And that doesn't exist. That's a modern construct in the church. The church are to be activated. So if you've got a
Amen.
loved one today that doesn't know Jesus, show them Jesus. Tell them your testimony. Tell them scripture. Tell them, tune them into something. Go out in the street and witness to people. We do this as a church. We go out and we witness to homeless. We witness to people walking past. We witness to anybody. I was at the gym. Sorry for calling on. I was at the gym the other day, and a guy made the mistake of talking to me at the gym. And, and I said made the mistake because I have one thing I want to talk about, and the one thing I want to talk about is Jesus. So I did this thing, and it's a thing I do often, and it might freak people out. But when he was talking to me, I said, "What's your name?" And he put out his hand. I put out my hand to shake him, and then I pulled him really close. And I said, "Let me pray with you." And I started praying with him, because at that point, he's like a deer in the headlights. He has no way of going, right, what's happening here? It's happening. But through me praying with him, he then tears up.
Aw.
And he is moved by the example of actually sharing Jesus. So use the time that we have on earth. Sorry. When I get excited, I just go. So
It's so cool. It's cool. No, it's great. It's amazing. It's awesome to hear all of that. That is way cool. That is way cool. Hey, by the way, something. I know something was said earlier. I know Antichrist came up, and the little horn and all that kind of stuff. By the way, I do not believe that that Donald J. Trump is the Antichrist.
no.
By the way, guys, oi, oi. Okay, No, I do not believe that. First of all, there's a number of problems with that, but I'm just going to say one just right off the bat. I believe he's 78 years old, and
Yeah.
and even if the rapture happened today, and even if the tribulation started today or tomorrow, which I think that there is a period of time between the two, but that's another thing there too. All right, if you would have Donald Trump at the end of the tribulation, or whoever the Antichrist, but if it were Donald Trump, he's 78, so what would that be? 7 years later, 85? Yeah,
Okay.
that would make him 85 years old. He, I that's just one thing, but there's a number of things, a number of reasons why.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I see he doesn't have the Isaiah 10 lineage. He's not, because the Assyrian is either by lineage or by area connected with the Antichrist. He doesn't have that. There are an awful lot of, see, what we tend to do, I think, when we're looking is we say, well, that person fits that criteria, and we give them a tick, and then we superimpose that's the Antichrist. But the problem is, the Bible is incredibly accurate. It is just right down. Every T is crossed, every I is dotted. It is so accurate that the final Antichrist will fulfill every single description of him. And I think that if you try and superimpose descriptions by just taking a few, well, that's where we get into error. So
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, so I'm gonna see if we can try and quickly finish up the questions that are out there. We're not gonna have any more time for additional questions, guys. I'm gonna try and see if we can kind of fast track and get to the ones that we've got. I know Allison put on here, question in context: is the little horn a king of a smaller 11th kingdom, as the 10 horns are 10 kingdoms? So he will be a king, a king of a small country north of Israel. Daniel Cox, is that Talks him that right? Okay, so anyhow, do you got a quick answer for that?
In general, he is a little horn that comes out and subdues. So the probably the best answer to that is Antioch Epiphanes, because that God gave us that model as a Moedim fulfillment. So in Hebrew, prophecy isn't linear, prophecy is pattern. The Moedim prophecy is like a coil, so it fulfills and fulfills. So Antioch Epiphanes was a fulfillment of it, but yet he wasn't necessarily a ruler of a, yeah, you could say it was an area, but he wasn't a ruler of a different empire that comes through, but he is the little horn that comes through. So I believe that if we take scripture at its entirety, the Antichrist comes out of the Roman Empire, the reconstituted Roman Empire. I believe he'll hit the characteristics of Assyrian and things like that. Now, it's to understand there's two legs of the Roman Empire, but, I'm trying to be quick here. So he'll come out of the reconstituted Roman Empire and he'll come up that way, if that makes sense. I do get what you're saying, and I understand that.
Okay, thank you. And we got Nancy C. Question: Russia has increased their military presence on the Syrian-Israeli border. Yes, that is correct. That is really significant. They say that they're there to prevent terrorist attacks and to assist the Jews to return to northern Israel. What are your thoughts on that?
I think this goes back to Putin's own description of himself. I think it was maybe a year or 2 years ago, he called himself the king of the Middle East. And I think he literally sees himself as that. But this will lead up to Ezekiel 38. It's a launching pad.
Right.
It's basically Russian territory within Syria. It's a launching pad for that. And in terms of how that hook is put in his jaw, I think, previously it was surmised that it could be to do with energy and it could be all of that. I'm probably not leaning towards that. I would think that it is something to do with the alliances that he has. So if he's in alliance with Turkey, and if he's in alliance with Iran, the minute Israel attack Iran, I think that could spark something there.
Yeah, kind of like NATO, what is it? Article
Yeah.
5, I think it is, an attack on one is an attack on all kind of thing. I think it could be a multi-pronged thing. It certainly, I think that would definitely be a component, for sure. I think that there are a number of things as well. The Dead Sea is exceedingly rich with incredible wealth within the Dead Sea. Israel is also very strategically located, so I think it also would play into the plans for global dominance by way of the strategic location of Israel. There's so many. I know that John Haller, John Haller also has another take on it, that it could be related to the population situation globally as well, having to do with birth rates, and there's a number of things. So, but yeah, great question. All the questions are great, by the way, guys. I see there's this one right here. Let's see. Okay, maybe two more. We're trying. All right. So Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53 question. What about the people who ask God? What about the people who ask God to avenge them who beheaded them?
Is this in Revelation 6? Is that what he's referring to?
I'm assuming.
As in they heading through the tribulation?
I'm assuming.
Okay.
I mean, they're not saying, but I mean, that's how I'm taking the question. So
yeah. Well, the avenging that we would see would be in terms of the tribulation, but it's again, it's the semantics of it. It's a case of, we know there's an avenging angel, but the idea of the vengeance or whatever pouring out of God, it sort of gives the connotation for me that it's cruel in some way, but it's not. It's when we look at the tribulation, people are getting what they have decided to follow. When we get to Revelation 13, they decide to follow and take the mark of the beast, and as they decide to take the mark of the beast, that's what they get. Compared to the Revelation 14 scripture, where the followers of God take the mark of God and they're kept aside from this. I believe that. I don't know what you mean by what about these people in the terms of what exactly the question is meaning. I believe that there will be avenging. There will be there will be justice poured out on those who have come against God's people. Now that happens in terms of Israel, that happens in terms of the believer. And that's why when we are struck or attacked in any way, shape, or form, God says to rely on him as our vindicator, or as high tower, our strong tower of refuge. He is our strength. He's the one who fights the battles for us. Same as what we see at Rephaim with Moses, Joshua, a picture of Jesus. Joshua fights the battle. Our job is to praise. And I think that's what that's sort of pointing to, is that, the people have been beheaded. They've stood for God. Now this is left over to you, God. This is your vengeance time. This is your wrath being poured out. It's left over to you. That's what I would point that to.
All right. And I think we've got time for one real quick one. Yep. Yeah, we got to be quick on this. By the way, thank you, Pookie. Very helpful. I really appreciate that. And, of course, all the mods on here. You guys are the bomb. So, okay, Allison on here with another question, Soul Miller. Question, I'm curious. In Exodus 38, God says he's against Gog and will turn him around and put hooks in his jaws. Why are both plural? Whose jaws? All right, so we got to be really quick on this one. Sorry.
This is Ezekiel 38.
This is the last question. Yes.
Yeah, so the jaws... I believe refer to, yes, it's the leader, it's Gog, but I believe it's a reference to the fact that it's an alliance. It's talking about also the alliance, but it's also talking about the leadership. So I think this is probably in some way, shape, or form a prophetic statement of future democracies from the time of Ezekiel till now. Whereas back then it would have been a king who made a decision on his own or made the decision to go to war. Right now, even in Russia, Putin could say, "I want to go to war," which he did with Ukraine, but it had to be people within the Kremlin that go, "Yes, yes, we're with you, we're with you, we're with you." So when it talks about the spirit of Gog, which Gog is a spirit, a principality, I believe it's referring to that. Yes, we will identify him as an individual, but let's say his administration would be the best way of saying it. So when we put a hook in the jaws, it can be read plural like that. The other way of reading it is, pluralizing your actual jawline and just calling it jaws. And that way, that's the other way of reading it.
All right. Well, sweet. Are we doing another one? No, we're not doing another. Okay. I wish we could. I see that there's one from Gerard. I think there was another one on there from someone as well. We did the best we could to get to all of them, gang. But next time around. But anyways, what am I scrolling here? Oh, okay. Sorry. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you so very much. We love all of you guys. I wish I could have gotten to more questions, but we just can't. But we love all of you guys, and you guys are incredible. Again, give us a thumbs up on there. Hit that thumbs up. Like us. Subscribe to our channel. Make sure you're still subscribed because some of those subscriptions get removed, if you guys know what I mean. So please check and make sure that you are there. And all right. And guys, by the way, don't forget to stay tuned to Hope for Our Times, because it looks like any day now we are going to be releasing those tickets for the conference here that's going to be at my church. It's going to be a Hope for Our Times conference here at my church. Going to be absolutely great. And we got Pastor Tom, Billy Crone, Don Perkins, who else? Brandon Holthouse. And I think I'm missing someone on here. So me, Tom, Billy, Brandon, Don Perkins. I hope I'm not missing anyone. But anyhow, we're going to have worship, which is going to be great as well, guys. We're going to have worship, so that's going to be sweet. You guys are going to absolutely love the conference. We got some really cool things planned. So, but stay tuned to Hope for Our Times. And man, I would love to have you guys come to Las Vegas here and check it out in person. If not in person, you can check it out online. But by the way, don't forget to connect with Pastor Gary in the description section of this video, and you can connect with him, with his ministry, and all the cool stuff that he puts out there as well. By the way, he also has a book out, and you can connect with his ministry and find out, there we go, about that book as well. So, all right, well, hey, Pastor Gary, it has been fantastic as always, and enjoy the snow out there. Enjoy that, and stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you guys either here or we're going to be there in the air. So either way, praise the Lord. God bless you guys.
God bless.